Tonight, Humanitarian pauses.
Israel agrees to temporary stops in fighting to allow civilians to flee Gaza.
As Jewish and Christian groups join forces to keep Israelis safe.
We evacuated nearly 50 families.
Plus, the winners and losers of last night's Republican presidential debate.
Or do you want Dick Cheney in 3-inch heels?
Say they're 5-inch heels, and I don't wear them unless you can run in them.
And
they're becoming a great power.
An alarming report on China's growing nuclear arsenal. All this and more
Tonight on Faith Nation.
A daily break from air bombardments in Gaza. Thanks for joining us for Faith Nation. I'm Jenna Browder.
Good evening from the CBN studio in Washington, D.C. I'm John Jessup. Well, Israel is set to begin daily 4-hour pauses in the fighting raging in the Gaza Strip. That will allow the tens of thousands of Palestinian civilians fleeing on foot to escape the intensifying war. President Biden said today there is, quote, no possibility of a ceasefire in Gaza, adding that he has asked Israel for even longer temporary halts in the fighting.
Now, the humanitarian pauses come in the middle of hostage negotiations involving Egypt and Qatar to secure the release of nearly 240 hostages taken captive by Hamas during the October 7th massacre.
We're still optimistic. The hostages in Gaza. What's the delay in getting more? The message to the families of the hostages in Gaza: we're not going to stop till we get them out.
We're obviously still working at this literally by the hour. We want to get all of them home, all of them back to their families where they belong.
The stoppages to allow aid to flow into Gaza come as the conflict in the Middle East trickles into other parts of the region. Today, President Biden was asked if retaliatory U.S. strikes on an Iranian weapons storage facility in Syria were working.
In the sense that we're hitting the targets we're seeking.
The airstrikes by 2 U.S. F-15 fighter jets come in the wake of the downing of a $30 million U.S. Reaper drone taken down over the Red Sea near Yemen by Iran-backed Houthi rebels. Yemen's military claims this unverified video shows the shootdown. It comes weeks after a U.S. destroyer intercepted 4 Houthi cruiser missiles and more than a dozen drones aimed at Israel. As the war wages on, Jewish and Christian groups on the ground are joining forces.
As CBN's Julie Stahl reports, their aim is clear: help Israelis escape the ongoing attacks from Hamas.
These children are having fun peacefully at a special event organized in Jerusalem after they were evacuated from southern Israel. These moms, Ortal Haddad and Ella Tovim Gadassi, say they were keeping the Sabbath at their homes in the farming community of Manin near Ashkelon when Hamas attacked.
We hear the rockets, unstoppable rockets, for the first time. Because we don't have a shelter, we cover our kids, me and my husband, on the ground and say all the time Tehillim, from Tehillim.
Psalms.
Yes, all the time. We are so scared, you know, I couldn't breathe. I felt that I can't breathe for the first time.
It was awful week for us in Manin. Most of the time we spent at the shelters and it was forbidden to go out. We felt unsecured, we felt unprotected. As parents, we felt like we cannot protect our children. If a terrorist will come, I have nothing that I can do.
David Nekrutman of Isaiah Projects says they hope to restore a sense of security to these people.
We said we're going to adopt a community. With my friends, and after 23 years of working with different organizations involved in Jewish-Christian relations over the years, everyone came together and saying, we're standing behind you, David.
9 days after the beginning of the war, Nekrutman and other ministries helped evacuate Moshav Manin to Jerusalem.
We evacuated nearly 50 families from a community that was near the Gaza border because of missile attacks from Gaza into the Israeli communities on the southern border. We felt it was our responsibility of pooling resources between Jews and Christians together. So we have a whole bunch of ministries working together to make this happen here in Jerusalem.
We didn't hear the rockets, we didn't hear the missiles, and we were very, very calm to be here, so we feel safe. You know, for the first time, we can breathe, finally. And our baby don't have to walk up in the middle of the night, crying.
Both Haddad and Gadassi expressed their gratitude for the rescue.
We want to thank the Christian, okay, who gave us the donation, which is incredible for me, that they care about us.
I'm surprised to hear that it's people not from Israel, it's American, and it's Christian American. And made me think that when you truly care about someone, when you truly love someone, you doesn't care what he's religious, where does he live.
As a teenager, Haddad had to evacuate her home almost 20 years ago when Israel uprooted some 9,000 Israelis from communities in the Gaza Strip and northern West Bank as part of the 2005 disengagement. While Israeli and Palestinian leaders described that as a move toward peace, it instead led to Hamas winning control of the region, followed by incessant fighting and now war.
This situation, it's because we left our home, because we gave our land, the God land, to the Hamas, okay? For me, it's only for the Hamas, okay? And I want to go back home. I want to feel safe. You know, in Gush Katif, I felt safe. Now I don't feel safe.
Nekrutman says while much of the world has condemned Israel and calls to free Palestine, he believes that means being free of Hamas and urges Christians to pray.
I would say to our Christian brothers and sisters out there, if you're praying, pray for our enemies to turn their hearts to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and then see the light and actually make real peace.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Thank you so much for that report, Julie. Well, the dust is still settling after the first Republican presidential debate since the deadly terror attack on the Jewish state. 5 candidates took to the stage in Miami Wednesday night, and almost immediately, Israel's war against Hamas dominated the conversation. CBN's Abigail Robertson is following the 2024 race for the White House and joins us now for more on how the GOP candidates fared last night. Abigail, support for Israel was a big talking point for the presidential hopefuls.
That's right, John. And pretty much right out the gate, the candidates were asked to share what they would be urging Prime Minister Netanyahu to do right now. And all of them were pretty much unified in their belief that Israel has a right to defend itself and should be responding with strength. While Governor Ron DeSantis took it a step further by talking about how he would handle Hamas sympathizers here at home. Take a look.
The first thing I said to him when it happened was I said, finish them. Finish them.
My foreign policy is simple. You cannot negotiate with evil. You have to destroy it.
I was the first presidential candidate to say, if you are here on a student visa as a foreign national, you're making common cause with Hamas, I'm canceling your visa and I'm sending you home. No questions asked.
Candidates were also asked how they would respond to the rise in anti-Semitism on college campuses, with Senator Scott calling for colleges that are allowing anti-Semitic protests to lose their federal funding.
Abigail, there's also been a lot of talk about the sparring between Nikki Haley and Vivek Ramaswamy. Talk about that.
That's right, Jenna. Things got heated a few times during the debate between the two candidates who are really kind of battling to solidify the third place spot in the polls right now. And Ramaswamy accused Haley of being a war hawk who's profited from conflict, and he later took a swipe at her family. Take a look.
Do you want a leader from a different generation who's going to put this country first? Or do you want Dick Cheney in 3-inch heels?
All right, Mr.
In which case, we've got 2 of them on stage tonight.
Yes, I'd first like to say they're 5-inch heels, and I don't wear them unless you can run in them.
In the last debate, she made fun of me for actually joining TikTok while her own daughter was actually using the app for a long time. So you might want to take care of your family first.
Leave my daughter out of your voice.
Here's the truth.
You're just
the easy answer.
And it wasn't just Haley that Ramaswamy went after. He opened the debate by saying the Republican Party has become a party of losers in the last few years, and he called on Ronna McDaniel to resign as chairwoman of the RNC.
Abigail, last night's debate came on the heels of an election day where Republican candidates did not fare well. How did that factor into the conversation?
Well, more than one candidate referenced the GOP's recent losing streak, with Ron DeSantis tying Trump to the GOP's recent election problems. But many analysts are pointing to the abortion issue as why Republicans are losing. While all candidates on stage say they are pro-life, They differ in what policies they're calling for and whether or not they want national restrictions or the issue to be left to the states. And Tuesday's losses have led some Republican leaders to call on candidates to not just be campaigning on pro-life legislation, but to also be pushing for bills that support mothers and families and really get to the root of the abortion issue. Jenna, John.
All right, Abigail Robertson, thank you very much.
Thanks, Abby. Well, Tim Head is the Executive Director of the Faith and Freedom Coalition, and he joins us now. Tim, welcome to you. Let's just pick up where Abby left off. I know that you wrote an op-ed in the Washington Examiner. Actually, I'm changing gears here, saying that Israel needs moral clarity. Will America provide it? Tim, you make the case for U.S. support for Israel. I wonder which of the candidates stood out to you last night with regard to their answers on Israel?
Well, you know, I'm at least thankful that we have virtual unanimity. I would say we have unanimity on support for Israel. There's some contrast or a kind of deviation on how best to support Israel. But you know, the tricky thing about when we're in the middle of armed conflict like we are in Israel, seeing rockets still actually coming in from Gaza and potentially from Hezbollah, is that economic sanctions and pure kind of diplomatic rhetoric really is no substitute, unfortunately, for force when force is actually applied against allies. And so I think that certainly Governor DeSantis and Ambassador Haley have been very strong in their articulation of that. I think that Mr. Ramaswamy has a lot of great ideas, but it's moving those into kind of live fire, if you will, no pun intended, is proving to be a bit of a challenge for him on the presidential stage.
Yeah, let's talk about 2024, specifically the issue of abortion, Tim. Issue 1 in Ohio had widespread support, including from evangelicals. Exit polling shows 24% of white, born-again, or evangelical Christians supported Issue 1. What do you make of that?
Well, I think what we're finding across the country in a lot of these referenda that are coming to ballots and voters across the country is it's very, very important for lawmakers that are actually sending these things to voters to be very measured and very calculated in the way that these referenda are crafted and phrased. If they're phrased too broadly or too kind of clumsily, there are these kind of small margins for error, and unfortunately, I think that's probably where we got caught in Ohio, is a very broad kind of generic piece of potential legislation or amendment, and we need these things to be very measured and very precise.
Tim, just a few seconds left. Abortion rights advocates have won every time they've been on the ballot since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. How does a pro-life organization like yours square the fact that when the electorate clearly seems that they want some protections for abortion?
Well, because frankly, I think that all voters, but particularly pro-life or religious voters, are very compassionate people, very sympathetic people, and so while they absolutely want to protect the innocent life of a newborn or a fetus, we also want to make sure that they're kind of that mothers that could be in vulnerable situations are also contemplated and protected as well. So that's again where it's important for us to be very measured and pretty targeted in the way that these things are phrased, and not just kind of generic kind of approximate swaths.
All right, Tim, I'm sorry we are out of time. Tim Head with Faith and Freedom Coalition, thank you so much.
Thank you. God bless.
After big wins in this week's off-year elections, today, what could be considered a blow for Democrats. Senator Joe Manchin will not seek re-election.
What I will be doing is traveling the country and speaking out to see if there is an interest in creating a movement to mobilize the middle and bring Americans together.
Manchin says the polarizing political climate is exhausting Americans, but he will continue to fight for the middle. The West Virginia senator stepping away opens the door for Republicans to pick up a seat in the Senate balance of power.
Taking note of China's nuclear expansion, a growing concern over its growing military arsenal, right after this. Welcome back. A new Pentagon report reveals a disturbing development in China's military power. Aside from expanding land, air, and sea capabilities, Beijing's nuclear arsenal is rapidly growing.
As national security correspondent Caitlin Burke reports, the DoD analysis shows China has blown past previous projections and plans to continue ramping up its nuclear arsenal in the years to come.
According to this intelligence, China has more than 500 nuclear warheads in its arsenal as of May. That's 100 more than last year and puts Beijing on pace to field more than 1,000 by 2030. A rapid expansion that has the U.S. taking note.
They're becoming a great power. They don't want to be checkmated by our nuclear forces, and they want to therefore be in our league.
Michael O'Hanlon of the Brookings Institution says China still has a ways to go before its stockpile rivals that of the U.S. or Russia. He adds, while the buildup isn't a surprise, he does find the budding partnership between Beijing and Moscow concerning.
We always had a framework, and we assumed that it was okay for Russia and the United States to each have equal numbers of different types of weapons. And now you have a problem, because if China comes into the equation, and China and Russia are strategic partners, and we let each of the three have the same number of weapons, now it could sort of feel like a 2-to-1, the United States getting, outmuscled or outgunned.
O'Hanlon says China's military rise will likely require new arms treaties, or at least greater transparency. Meanwhile, the Pentagon report also shows a sharp increase in risky behavior by the PRC in the air.
In the last 2 years, we've had as many incidents with the Chinese in the South China Sea and environment as in the previous decade.
Between the fall of 2021 and fall of 2023, the DoD documented more than 180 instances of dangerous air intercepts against U.S. aircraft. One of the most recent happening at the end of October, when a Chinese fighter flew recklessly close to a U.S. bomber.
And the bottom line is that, in many cases, this type of operational behavior can cause accidents, and dangerous accidents can lead to inadvertent conflict.
This news comes as President Biden prepares to meet with Chinese leader Xi Jinping this weekend in California. The two are expected to announce the resumption of military communication channels, a move seen as an attempt to stabilize the relationship between the world's two largest powers and lower the risk of a military misunderstanding. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Washington.
Thank you, Caitlin. A new survey shows hostility to the U.S. and China dropping sharply. 45% of adults in China now say they regard the U.S. as an ally, according to a new Morning Consult poll. And between April 2022 and last month, the number of Chinese adults who regard the U.S. as an enemy falling from 80% to less than 50%. The change coincides with China's economic slowdown, now at its lowest level of growth in decades.
A newly approved medication designed to help people lose weight. That story and more next on Faith Nation. And welcome back. A new weapon in the battle against the bulge for the more than 40% of Americans struggling with obesity. The Food and Drug Administration has approved the new weight loss drug, Zepbound, produced by Eli Lilly. It has the same active ingredients as the company's successful diabetes drug, Mounjaro. Zepbound is set to treat people who are overweight with at least one related underlying condition like high blood pressure. Well, Zepbound is just the latest among a handful of popular drugs used for weight loss.
Yeah, that's right. Diabetes medicines Ozempic, Mounjaro, and Wegovy have been grabbing headlines for the pound-shedding side effects. But there could be more benefits. Studies show Wegovy also appears to help patients' hearts. But as medical reporter Lori Johnson reports, the drug is out of reach for most Americans.
Portions of a new study released by the makers of Wegovy shows the weight loss medicine lowers the risk of events like stroke and heart attack. Researchers found a 20% decrease over a 5-year period in people with heart disease who are also overweight and obese.
Wegovy is a fairly new type of drug called a semaglutide. Another is the popular drug Ozempic. They're available by prescription only for type 2 diabetes and weight loss.
The results are impressive, particularly among those who couldn't drop their unwanted pounds before taking this type of drug.
Fact of the matter is, there's a lot of factors that go into the conditions of overweight and obesity. It's a complex, chronic condition. It's not as simple as eating less and moving more, so they do have a major role, but insurance does not oftentimes cover them. They're incredibly expensive, and they have to be managed by someone who's familiar with this class of medications.
The Wegovy study results are the first to show a weight loss drug can reduce heart disease, America's #1 killer. The question remains whether the mechanics of the drug or the weight loss itself led to cardiovascular improvement. The study of over 17,000 people has not been reviewed by other scientists yet. It's too early to say whether more insurance companies might begin covering the roughly $1,300 monthly cost of Wegovy if there's evidence it can lead to medical benefits beyond weight loss. One industry representative said it's impossible to evaluate the efficacy and long-term effectiveness of a prescription drug based solely on a drug manufacturer's press release. Some people who take these drugs complain of side effects like nausea, vomiting, and delay in gastric emptying.
It is absolutely brutal. Patients often come in with severe dehydration and electrolyte abnormalities, and many have their symptoms are so difficult to control that they have to be admitted to the hospital.
One woman who lost 150 pounds is suing the maker of Ozempic for so-called stomach paralysis.
Her problems have been so severe that she's been to the emergency room multiple times.
Meanwhile, reports of the drug class possibly causing suicidal thoughts are being investigated. Doctors say when deciding whether to take a medication, patients should compare its potential risks to the possible benefits. In the case of weight loss drugs, the benefits of dropping just 10 pounds can lead to improved blood pressure, less joint pain, and lower risk of serious health problems like gallbladder disease, cancer, even mental health disorders. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Finally tonight, an age-honoring tradition. Each year, towns across New England gift their oldest living local with a special walking stick called the Boston Post Cane.
I think this is super cool. This year, though, one New Hampshire town had to hand over two, all because of a tie more than a century in the making. Meet Marion Cronin and Barbara Long, the town of Rye's newest cane recipients. The 102-year-olds, at 102 years old, rather, the women not only share the same age, get this, they actually share a birthday. Although both were born in 1921, no one can figure out who was born first. Thus, the tie for the longest living resident. Nonetheless, the women say they're excited to share the honor. Happy birthday to them.
Happy birthday. I love that tradition.
Great way to honor our elders. Yes. Well, have a great night.
Thanks for joining us.